The Concorde was a commercial aircraft designed to carry passengers at supersonic speeds. Constructed in the 1960s as a collaborative effort between France and the United Kingdom, the Concorde marked the inception of commercial aviation. It was only put into service for 14 years before both nations deactivated it in 2003. On March 2, 1969, the Concorde saw its maiden successful flight at a maximum cruising speed of 2,179 kilometers per hour, 1,354 miles per hour, more than twice the speed of sound. In 1973, it crossed the Atlantic for the first time. British Airways and Air France launched the world's first scheduled supersonic passenger service in 1976 when they launched flights from London to Bahrain and Rio de Janeiro, respectively. Later on, there were additional regular flights to Washington, D.C. and New York City. Due to the massive financial burden of producing and operating the Concorde on both the UK and France, most customers' tickets were extremely expensive. For instance, in 1996, a round-trip ticket with British Airways from New York to London cost $7,574, or about $12,460, when adjusted for inflation through 2020. Many of these planes were likely operating at half capacity as a result, and those boarding were often airline guests or upgraded passengers. Sadly, on the afternoon of July 25, 2000, this marvel of the sky crashed dramatically in Paris after taking off from Charles de Gaulle Airport. Throughout its 24-year history, there has never been a single fatality aboard the Concorde. That was going to happen soon. Air France Flight 4590 was scheduled to fly to New York City at speeds of up to 1,350 miles per hour, crossing the Atlantic Ocean in just 3.5 hours. The Concorde caught fire while accelerating on the runway and midway through the takeoff, creating a spectacular sight for the dozens of spectators watching. The flames quickly spread across the tarmac, becoming longer than the aircraft itself. The Concorde, becoming a tumbling ball of flame, barely made it airborne, circling 200 feet above the ground. Despite the crew's heroic efforts, the aircraft was overcome by a blazing fire after just 1 minute of flight, causing it to crash into a small hotel located 6 miles from the airport. The devastating accident claimed the lives of all 109 passengers and crew on board, along with 4 individuals on the ground. When rescue personnel arrived, the crash site was covered in wreckage, including the distinctive nose cone of the Concorde, broken wings, passenger bags, and a hotel bathtub. Following an investigation, it was determined that a tiny, 1-inch wide titanium strip, just 17 inches long, that fell off the engine of a departing Continental DC-10 just 5 minutes before Flight 4590 was due to take off. It was the primary cause of the Concorde accident. The strip was not a regular component of the DC-10. 16 days prior, a mechanic in Houston had riveted it on and then sealed it with a second coat of mastic adhesive. However, the glue had failed and the rivets had come loose, and nobody had witnessed it fall onto the de Gaulle runway. In less than a month, the whole Concorde's fleet was grounded, and it would take close to 1.5 years to complete the ensuing investigation. Concorde service was resumed in 2001 despite the fact that passenger demand never rose. However, the aircraft service was permanently terminated in 2003. Flight 4590 marked the conclusion of the Concorde glorious history, which had begun with the glittering brilliance of a technological marvel but had faded owing to poor design features and crushing commercial limitations. Only 14 of the more than 200 aircraft that were intended for the French and British government's Concorde program were ever placed into commercial service. On October 24, 2003, British Airways Flight BA2 took off from New York. A little over 3.5 hours later, it appeared over central London. That was the last day of commercial supersonic flight. Staff members and a large group of excited spectators welcomed the aircraft, marking the final commercial flight of this amazing aircraft. The Concorde met its end because of a variety of complications. First and foremost, the jet's tremendous sonic boom, the noise produced when an aircraft exceeds the sound barrier, and, more significantly, their high operating costs made it impossible for airlines to make a profit. About 20 years or so later, in 2024, we finally hear about some new projects may be able to bring back on the table the fast flights between continents. Recently, two aviation initiatives, one from a commercial business named Boom Technologies and the other from a collaboration between NASA and Lockheed Martin, are currently striving to allay those worries and restore passenger access to supersonic flight. Both programs will achieve a significant milestone later this year when they begin test flights of their novel aircraft.